Have you ever wished you could just fast forward life, maybe peek into your own future a little bit and borrow the breakthroughs and the accomplishments that the future self, that future version of you has already figured out? I mean, imagine being able to skip months or even years of trial and error, wasted energy, dead-end strategies, and instead connecting to just the handful of actions and habits and insights and people that will actually make everything easier for you. So that's what this episode is about today. It's about using your future self, that version of you that's already accomplished that big, beautiful goal you have, and collapsing time. So it also involves using the Pareto Principle, which is the 80-20 rule, and combining it. So you combine the Pareto Principle with the identity of your future self. So I'm not just talking about setting goals here. I'm talking about living as if the results are already yours today. So it's kind of like hacking your own timeline to make that 10x goal truly easier than a 2x goal. That exponential goal becomes easier than the linear incremental one. Now, let me tell you a little bit about a client that I worked with recently. She was launching a new online business while juggling family responsibilities, and she was also experiencing the natural doubts that tend to come with stepping into a bigger game. And when I asked her, what would your future self, your future self that's 3 years from now, let's say, already thriving, already confident, what would she say to you today? And my client, very quickly, her answer was maybe a little predictable, but she said, she'd tell me to, get to work here, get more done. She'd kick me in the behind and say, let's get going. But then very quickly, she stopped and she smiled. And she said, actually, no, because she and I had been working for a while on a lot of this around creating a future self version and looking at everything she was doing using the Pareto Principle. So she said, no, actually, my future self would tell me to stop wasting time on the 80% of things that I'm kind of obsessing about sometimes right now, because she'd know which of the 20% actually move the needle. And I have to tell you, when I heard my client say that, I got goosebumps. I was so excited because it showed me that the work we've been doing together had really landed with her. She was really taking it on. And it seemed to me to be such a turning point for her because, instead of trying to just grab everything from her future self identity all at once, she was talking about selectively borrowing the few habits and insights that mattered the most. And I know she got it because 2 months after that particular conversation we'd have, she had launched her business. Things were going great. And she probably collapsed what would have taken her, I would say, between, 18 months to 2 years to get from where she was when we started working to where she is now. There's no question that the work we did together. And she will happily say that if anyone asks her, that it collapsed time. So this is one of the big ideas of what I want to talk about today is that the future self, your future self is really far more strategic than just an inspiring exercise for creating a vision. You use it as a filter, a really, really powerful filter. And by that, I mean, you consider how would you think, how are you acting, how are you conducting yourself, who are you hanging around with, what are the conversations you're having, what are the kinds of things you're doing when you've already achieved your goal state. That is the most powerful aspect of creating a future self version of you. And then when you combine it with the Pareto Principle, that combination becomes this incredibly efficient and I would say almost a surgical tool for collapsing time, because your future self has already, she's tried everything or he's tried everything. Your future self has run the experiments and learned from the failures and discovered which of the actions, which 20% of them are actually creating the best results, the 80% of your results. So there's there's a lot of research on this, and I've spoken about this before. So I've made reference to Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy because they've done a lot of work around future self and around promoting this idea that a 10x goal is so much easier than a 2x goal. So I've talked about that in previous episodes. You can check those out. But I just want to today maybe present it in a slightly different way and talk about it in terms of borrowing. You borrow from that future self. And then we can add to that some of Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset, because this is firmly planted within that realm, because her research has demonstrated that the way we frame who we are, how we view ourselves, the way we think about who we're becoming, it can completely change the actions that we're willing to take. So the stronger you identify as your future self, so you're not just hoping for it, you're not just looking forward as something that will occur in the future, but you start acting and living from your future self identity now, you will literally change your present neural wiring. It's quite incredible. And then, if we add to that Richard Koch's work on the 80-20 principle, and this applies to every domain, so business, health and wellness, relationships, and so on, most of the results we get come from very few inputs, that 20%. So this is why the future self vision and the Pareto Principle is such a potent growth formula for you. So how would you actually do this? So let me give you a kind of 3-step process that you can use to begin to collapse time between where you are now and that future version of you that's already achieved your big, fabulous 10x goal. So the first one is just to project forward a little bit, to picture your future self. Let's say 3 years from now, you've already achieved the goal that currently excites you and maybe terrifies you a little bit. That's okay. So you can write down the 3 habits or decisions or ways of thinking that you're living by that you don't yet employ today. So you project ahead 3 years to this successful version of you, the future version of you, and you think about 3 habits, decisions, or just ways of being that you're not currently living by, but that you can adopt now. So that's the first thing that you can do. The second is to do Pareto scans, kind of an audit. So you take a look at your current schedule, your calendar, your to-do list, all the things you do on a regular basis, week by week, month by month, whether it's in your business or if it's a personal goal you're working towards. And you need to be fairly ruthless about this. Ask yourself, which 20% of these would my future self double down on? Which 80% would my future self kind of laugh at perhaps, or delegate to somebody else, or just delete altogether off the to-do list or the calendar? This step is really, really important. It can be hard at first, but once you get going on it, you'll find it gets easier and easier. And of course, this is where having a coach, a mentor, a guide, having someone who's been through it, someone who understands the process can really help you. Because this is another thing that, yes, you could do it on your own, but it's going to take more time. It's going to take more energy. It's going to be more frustrating possibly. So getting some support on that that'll help collapse that timeline too. And then when you've projected forward to your future self, you've done your Pareto scan, then you choose one future self behavior and you install it today. Not next month, not when you feel ready. You start today. And it might be as simple as blocking out an hour of time for some deep thought and some creativity or whatever you love to do most around your business or whatever your goal is, the things that feel really high vibe to you. And that probably means no distractions and no doom scrolling on social media and so on. But whatever it is for you, where you feel like you're just in flow state, right? So borrow one of those future self behaviors and start doing it today. So when you do this kind of I don't even want to say work because it can be really playful to do this actually. So when you engage in this sort of playfulness, you're no longer inching towards your future self. You are collapsing the gap so much faster because again, the goal state, our goals are not something we work towards. They are something we live from. So if it's a health goal you have, let's say your future self vision is that you are fit and strong and healthy. So perhaps you did the Pareto scan and you revealed there were some things some choices you've been making, perhaps around what you're eating or how often you're getting exercise, whether that's yoga or gym workouts or bike rides or, vigorous walks with friends. You haven't been doing that enough. And so your future self rather recognizes that this is something you need to engage in daily. And so that's one habit that you bring into today and you start doing today because your future self will be doing that every day. Your future self who is fit and strong and energized, that version of you would have some kind of workout every day or at least, 5-6 times a week. If it's business that you have, that your goal is rooted in, and maybe it's that your future self is running a thriving coaching practice, or maybe you've got a product that you're selling. So perhaps instead of having 100 different marketing tactics to try and promote your practice or your product, you've winnowed it down to the 20% that actually makes the biggest difference. And that might be, for example, showing up in high visibility on just one platform instead of splashing out on all of them and feeling like you're on this treadmill, this endless treadmill that sucks so much of your energy and doesn't really produce so much results. So borrow on that today, that your future self doesn't do all things all the time. Your future self is very selective, and you get to be selective today too. Or if it's your relationships and your future self has this beautiful, connected, nurturing, joyful partnership. And so in order to achieve that, it turns out it wasn't going on 50 speed dating evenings. It was just having some really deep conversations with people, and perhaps it's joining one or two groups that actually have people with similar values and interests where you're more likely to run into someone who shares your values and who would make a really great life partner for you. So borrow that and collapse the time distance. So collapsing time, it's not about speed for speed's sake, because paradoxically, when we do this kind of work, it often means that you get to slow down because you're eliminating 80% of the noise that's just not producing much in terms of you getting to your goal state. Most of us high achievers, listen, this is the thing. It's hard to work against this because most of us can get kind of addicted to busyness because busyness can feel like progress. But your future self, if your future self is like my future self knows that busyness for the sake of busyness actually isn't progress. It's just a drain. And that busy 80% is a real trap. So collapsing time and connecting with my future self means I'm ignoring what everybody else thinks is urgent and just honoring what I know deep inside is actually important to me because I've got alignment between my values and the things that I'm doing. Okay, so your challenge for this week then, well, you could choose one of these things. You might write a short letter from your future self from 3 years away from now. And your future self could ask you, what are the 3 things you're glad you did today? What are the 3 things you're glad you did today? So anything that you're connecting with, having a conversation with, just embodying your future self, anything you can do around that, do it. It's going to make such a difference. You could also begin to list out all the things you do week in and week out that currently you believe are helping you get closer to your goal state. And then apply the 80-20 rule. Highlight the 20% that actually makes a difference. And then start working to eliminate the other 80%. And finally, just one action today. Borrow one element from your future self. And be intentional about that. And really supercharge it, I suppose, like journal on it, do visualization exercises on it once or twice a day. That only takes 5 or 10 minutes, but it can be really, really powerful. If you do this, I think you'll be stunned at how much faster results arrive, because no longer are you just hustling harder, but you're aligning with your future self's powerful 20%. So remember, the future, it's not something you wait from. It's something you can borrow from, and it's something you bring into today, your future self. Live from that today. And the more often you do that, the more often you leverage parts of your future self's life and you bring it into today, the faster you collapse time and the sooner you'll be living a life that right now feels out of reach. So your future self is waiting. Don't just wait to meet up with that person one day. Invite that person into today and just see the difference it will make. Okay, that's it for this episode. If you found this helpful, let me know. I'd love to hear from listeners and help me grow this podcast. So feel free to share this episode with friends or anyone you feel could benefit from the message. I'd love to continue to grow and get my podcast up to the top of the bestseller, the best listener charts, and you can help me do that. So thanks very much for listening in, and I will catch you on the next episode.